Hello and welcome to the Money Tree. Did any of our nationalized banks earlier deny loan to anybody in the union government? Or did any of the netas fail to secure a job there before entering politics? Because there is no other sane reason for their dislike and disgust for the banks, these nationalized banks. They leave no opportunity to malign, to weaken or even sell them. Forcing State Bank of India for a joint venture with Adani Capital was the latest. SBI is joining hands with Adani Capital for co-lending in agriculture sector to provide loans to farmers for purchase of tractors and farm implements. Advances to increase efficiency of farm operations and improve productivity. A normal business decision which happens between companies everywhere. But this came as a shock. It starts with what the bank chairman said about it. He said that this partnership shall help SBI to expand customer base, to reach out to maximum customers in far-flung areas. But Adani Capital is one of the smallest non-banking financial companies in the country. Just 63 branches operating in only 6 states. And this statistics is only a tip of the iceberg. In the last financial year, Adani's paid-up capital was only 17.3 crore, while that of SBI was 892 crore. How much loans did they disburse in agriculture so far? 1,300 crore by Adani Capital against SBI's 1,96 crore. Adani Capital's total income was 105 crore last year. SBI more than 3 lakh crore. Net profit made by Adani Capital last year was 11 crore. SBI 20,410 crore. Adani Capital has about 20,000 customers. SBI has 45 crore. It's 1/4 of the entire Indian banking industry. And lastly, Adani Capital started operations just 5 years back. So how exactly is Adani Capital going to help SBI improve its customer base, increase the credit supply? Do the biggest bank in India with about 72,000 business correspondent outlets and 28,000 dealers really need a partner? And if State Bank of India really wanted to join hands with a private player, why not with Tata Capital or with Bajaj Finance, which are in the lending business for a long time and have fared better? Why did SBI choose such an insignificant player? Why did the State Bank of India choose Adani Capital? Well, the answer is not very tough to find out if you don't know it already. 5 years back, there was a similar story. At that time, it was the Ambanis that joined hands with SBI.
ये सब बैंक्स ऐसे क्यों होते हैं? हमारे ही पैसों से चलते हैं और हमें ही घंटों लाइन में वेट कराते हैं.
Jio Payments Bank was launched as a joint venture between SBI and Reliance Jio in 2018. SBI held 30% of holding, valued at around 69 crore. Why do SBI, the largest bank in India, needs partner to launch a payment bank? Access to state-of-the-art technology and better customer reach were among the clarifications given at that time. But after 4 years, where do we stand? Jio Bank's deposits are just about 17 crore, borrowings around 10 crore, operating expenses 103 crore, and a loss of about 90 crore. And where are the persons who greenlit the deal? The SBI chairman who put everything in place, Arundhati Bhattacharya, now sits at the director board of Reliance Industries. She joined Reliance days after the end of 1 year cooling off period mandatory for retiring SBI officials. Bank Employees Union also alleged that the huge loans approved for Reliance at that time were also a quid pro quo, which she denies. Payment banks work under certain conditions. They can't lend money or open current accounts. This was done to keep a check on fund diversion by companies indulging in frauds. Last week, Jio Bank has sought permission to open current account of Reliance Industries and other group companies. It seems a new story is unfolding. Trade unions had opposed the new venture, warning that ultimately Reliance will establish a full-fledged bank, remove SBI from joint venture, and emerge as its biggest competitor. Next time, when you hear stories of banks making losses, remember, nothing is a coincidence. The world is an unequal place, everybody knows that. India is no different, we know that too. But did anybody think that India's 50% of the population owns just 6% of the total national wealth? Meanwhile, the super rich owns its 65%. This gap, this difference is one of the highest in the whole world, says the recently published World Inequality report. And there are even more bigger eyebrow raisers in this report. India has surpassed the pre-independent times in the income earned by the rich. It was 50% of the total national income till 1947, and now it has jumped to 57%. Every rich person earns 20 times more than an average Indian. Independent India had brought down the rich man's share to 40%. But the surge in the income of the rich happened after 1990 in the liberalization era. While income refers to the money earned by individuals on a regular basis, wealth is the total value in terms of possessions and money. In wealth disparity, we are even worse. 3 crore is the average wealth of the rich 1% of the population, while half of the population has just 66,000 rupees, which is nothing in comparison. This gap already existed and the pandemic widened it even more, points out the World Inequality report. Faring poor in income and wealth equality, what about some gender parity? The female share in the total labor income of India is only 18%. Asian countries in total are better with 21%, and many of our neighbors are way ahead of us, be it the mighty China or the minions like Nepal and Sri Lanka. But we are better than Pakistan if that satisfies our ego. The story of the world in total is not different. Globally, richest 10% owns 76% of all the wealth, and the poorest half of the population owns 2%. This has been the state of things for a very long time, and the pandemic accelerated the growth of super rich. The contribution of India to this figure is very significant that if we are removed from the analysis, the share of wealth of the bottom 50% increases. In the last couple of days, you must have seen these statistics and even more in the media. The report is an extensive one with lot of statistics. But what's the remedy? Do the World Inequality report suggest any? Yes, it do. But that part of the report is not discussed as detailed as the statistics. Some media, mainstream media, didn't even mention it. The countries across the world have been richer over the past 40 years, but its governments have become significantly poor. Or in other words, the rich individuals and the corporates are growing bigger, wealthier and powerful than the governments. In rich countries, the share of wealth of the governments is close to zero or negative. This trend gained more momentum during pandemic as the governments had to borrow money equivalent to 10 to 20% of GDP from private sector. The report warns that this will weaken the ability of governments to make crucial policy decisions in future. It can be about anything from tackling of inequality to fighting climate change. So what do? World Inequality report suggests more taxing of the rich. While the world has progressive income tax system almost everywhere, the wealth tax is fixed. Whatever be the wealth, the tax percentage doesn't change. There is no logic behind this, argues the report. If a progressive wealth tax is introduced, ranging from 1% to 3.5%, where individuals having wealth above $100 billion are charged the highest, a substantial amount can be carved out for the less fortunate majority. At 25% more spending in healthcare is possible among other things, explains the report. Corporate taxes have been substantially reduced since 1980s as an excuse for better economic growth. And today in many countries, it's almost equal to the tax percentage charged on the middle class and the poor. The plot thickens in the international arena. In the name of aid to poor countries, multinationals carry away huge profits. The capital income flowing from African countries is 3 times the amount of international aid it received from 1970 to 2012. Now the attempt is for a 15% corporate tax across the globe in all countries. The report argues that since the multinationals are the main winners from globalization, the tax should be 25%. And why not a global asset register and publishing of basic tax data by all countries? Or a one-time wealth tax to get over pandemic-induced financial crisis. It's inevitable, argues the study led by Lucas Chancel of the Global Inequality Lab. After all, inequality is a political choice, not a fatality. Wholesale price inflation spiked to an all-time high in November, the worst ever since liberalization. Rise in food prices, especially for vegetables and minerals and petroleum products, primarily caused the spike. The data is authentic from the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. But most of the newspapers buried it in some inside pages. TV studios didn't even notice. Electoral bonds, the financial instrument to make donations to political parties, is not a matter of public interest, declared Central Information Commission. An RTI inquiry about sale and encashment of bonds with SBI in 2018 is turned down. The appeal was pending with the Commission for nearly 3 years. If allowed, it would have revealed denomination-wise details and total number of buyers of bonds just before the Parliament elections. Finally, Reliance Capital is taken over by Reserve Bank of India. The company was on the verge of insolvency. It was debt-ridden for a long time, but RBI took at least 4 years to act, a favour which DHCL or S Bank didn't get. The Union government's flagship program for the girl child, Beti Bachao Beti Padhao, turns out to be an eyewash. 352 crores, which is 79% of the total expenditure, went for advertisements, finds out a Parliament committee. The data is of 4 years from 2016. Income tax raids reveal fraudulent transactions in 4 asset reconstruction companies. They acquired non-performing assets from banks at far lesser price than the collateral securities for such loans, and the money for the purchase came from the borrowers too. Cash of 4 crore has also been seized along with documents during the search. While the world is raking brains to cut carbon emissions, coal power demand is going to hit a new high. Pushed by economic recovery, demand is rising in China, India and USA. The total consumption this year will be 10,350 terawatt hours, which is up by 9%, says the International Energy Agency. It will be an uphill task for India to increase its renewable energy installations, reveals the Coal vs. Renewable Energy report brought out by Climate Trends and Center for Financial Accountability. Pandemic has slowed down the progress. Only 4.4 gigawatts of renewable energy was commissioned in 2020, a steep drop from 10 gigawatts installed in 2019. And even if the country bounced back, it seems hard to hit the 175 gigawatt target in time. Adani Airports Limited charged royalty from RT-PCR tests. Maharashtra government alleged that 30 to 35% royalty is charged by the company on revenues earned from conducting RT-PCR tests at the Mumbai airport. This is windfall profit at the cost of passengers and must be curtailed, demands the government in a letter to the Union Ministry for Health and Family. While debates are raging on the inefficiency of public sector banks, our 41,000 posts remains vacant there. State Bank of India tops the list with a vacancy of 8,544, reveals Finance Minister in an answer to the Parliament. But according to Nirmala Sitharaman, this has not affected the workload or efficiency of the institutions. Can India fulfill its promise made at the Glasgow Climate Summit on the reduction of fossil fuels? In fact, it's a question to all nations. Renewable energy is the new buzzword, and the question shifts to who will pay the bill, who will finance it. Lot of countries, lot of financial institutions and many international organizations are deep into it. It's called green finance. But many believe that what's propagated in the name of green finance is not actually green, or it's less green. The third Energy Finance Conference held last week delved deep into it. How clean is green finance? India is the largest emitter of carbon dioxide globally. We need 11 lakh crore every year for climate action, says a study by Climate Policy Initiative. But so far, green finance flowing annually to India is only 10,000 crore, just 1% of the requirement. And this is also a rough assumption as there is no hard data on such funds. We cannot track its green credentials, and hence any project with inflated claims of green compliance or which actually cause harm to local biodiversity gets a green tag. As the pressure mounts globally for climate action, greenwashing of finance is happening. Organized jointly by Center for Financial Accountability, Indo-German Center for Sustainability at IIT Madras and Climate Trends, the 4-day conference had speakers from different parts of the world and with different perspectives. These were some of the thoughts.
As far as a decarbonization advocate is concerned, a carbon warrior, they don't care whether a unit of energy is used by someone sitting in England like I am. If I took off this sweater in shirt sleeves, all I need to do is double the heater. Consume 3 times the amount of energy. The heating is available. Well, if it's being done through solar and goody-goody technologies, then I don't care. Only don't use coal. But what about a child in India who needs that energy in a light bulb to study? As long as both energies come from the same source, renewable, clean, green, the climate warrior does not care. And therefore, the entire debate on the energy transition has been about technologies that will help people make money, to produce energy, to maintain the current production and consumption lifestyles exactly as they are. And those people, whether it is Adani or Ambani in India, or British Petroleum or Elon Musk in the West, are going to make money off the green transition, whether you like it or not.
Climate finance, its use, its purpose, how it is going to be used should be according to what the peoples of the South determines. It should not be subject to conditions and subject to preferred partners or preferred allied governments of developed country governments. So that's an important distinction, so that when climate finance is flowing through institutions like the World Bank, for example, that is controlled primarily by the developed country parties, we from the South have very little say in terms of how this is going to be managed, disbursed, and so on.
Some of the proposals for this kind of net zero, for the carbon capture, etc., are actually outrightly dangerous. You're talking about increasing the absorption capacity of the oceans, for instance, by pumping enormous amounts of chemicals into it, which will suddenly magically enable the oceans to absorb that much more carbon. What does it do to the aquatic life? What will it do to the oceans dynamics on which the earth and all life actually depends? That nobody is actually looking at.
Even if you set up something to offset a carbon crime in a particular location, the victims of that crime, in terms of health impacts on whoever lives around the area, in terms of the economic impacts, in terms of the welfare of people who are thrown out from their land, none of this is factored in. So all of that detail is all brushed under the carpet. Similarly, the whole time element. I mean, the assumption behind this offsetting seems to be that time will stand still, the progression of climate change will freeze until I can get my offset mechanism in place and tick off, the figures on both sides of the account book. So that the carbon emissions that I'm causing today are raising the temperature and are destroying, human welfare today.
COP26 has been a failure.
My Build Back Better framework will make historic investments in clean energy.
We need to phase out, not phase.
2070 तक नेट जीरो का लक्ष्य हासिल करेगा.
Blah blah blah. Words that sound great, but so far has led to no action. Green economy, blah blah blah. Climate neutral, blah blah blah.
Well, that's all from us for now. Before you leave, please mark your reactions and write your comments. We love to hear from you. Till we meet again, goodbye and good luck.